Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Minnesota Twins, the team that has not won a playoff game since 2004. I'm wearing a Minnesota Wild jersey because I do not have any Twins gear. Um, so let's get started. So this season, they're off to a very good and division-leading 26-16 start, which is a 619 win percent. Whereas last season, through the same first 42 games, they were a abysmal 14-28 for a 333 win percent. So clearly, there's a very big difference in how these teams are starting off their season. And last season, they did fix it somewhat. Obviously, they didn't stay anywhere near their 333 win percent, but they still ended up 73-89 and fifth in their division. Whereas this year, they have a very solid chance at winning their division, with the White Sox faltering and only being one game above 500. So let's look at their offseason changes. What brought them to this very good start compared to their last season? So they lost Andrew Simmons to free agency. Last season, he played 131 games and only accumulated 0.8 WAR. Whereas this season, he's only played 7 games so far and has 0 WAR. So this looking like a positive for the Twins. They lost Michael Pineda. He played 22 games and had 1.4 WAR. Whereas this season, he's only played 5 games and has 0.1 WAR. Obviously, WAR with pitchers is not the best, but for this purposes, it still kind of shows where they are at. They lost Alex Colomé to the Rockies. He pitched in 67 games to only a 0.1 WAR. And this season, in 14 games, he's accumulated that same 0.1 WAR. Still not too much of a loss. They're okay without him. They added Dylan Bundy, who last season for the Angels was extremely iffy. He pitched in 23 games to a 0 WAR. And this season, in only 6 games, he has 0.4 WAR. So even if he could keep this rate up, he would still prove pretty solid for the team throughout the season. Next, they had their big trade with the Rangers and the Yankees, where they acquired Kiner Falefa and traded Mitch Garver, their loss, to the Rangers. He played 68 games last season to a 2.2 WAR, and this season he's playing significantly worse than he did last season. He played 26 games and only has 0.2 WAR. So again, this is likely to look like a good trade for the Twins, especially considering what they did with the Yankees afterwards, where they traded IKF to the Yankees and Ben Rortvedt, a catching prospect, for Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. They also obviously sent them to Josh Donaldson, but we'll get to that. Gary Sanchez last season played 117 games to a 1.5 WAR. Whereas this season, he's played in 37 games so far, only to 31 games to a 0.3 WAR. So he's not doing fantastic, but neither is Mitch Garver, so it's not really a loss there. It's not like Mitch Garver's thriving in Texas, and then that's something that the Twins should be regretting. Neither catcher's doing great, so the trade's fine from that perspective. They also got Gio Urshela, who last season played 116 games to only a 0.7 WAR, a little bit disappointing. This season, in 37 games, he only has 0.1 WAR, so kind of on a worse trajectory than even last season. So from that perspective, the trade isn't looking fantastic, but the Twins are doing well enough that it's, again, not a big deal. They're still making it work. They're still getting the results they want with their 26 wins. They sent Josh Donaldson to the Yankees. Last season, he played 135 games for the Twins to a solid 2.9 WAR. And this season, he's keeping that pace up. He has played in 37 games to a 0.9 WAR. He's still doing well. He's on track for about 4 WAR. So if he continues playing how he is, he should best how he did last season. And they also acquired Sonny Gray from the Reds. He pitched in 26 games last season for the Reds to a 2.4 WAR. And this season, he's pitched in 5 games so far, only to 0.3 WAR. So he does need to pick up his production to make that trade a bit better for the Twins. They also got Joe Smith. He's pitched 50 games last season to a 0.4 WAR, which is pretty career average for him. He usually averages about half a WAR a season. And this season so far, he's pitched in 17 games and already has that 0.4 WAR. So he's producing about 3 times better. Not technically, but like a lot better than last season. So if he could keep that up, he should be on track for about 1 WAR, which would be fantastic for him, and the Twins would be very happy with that. Next, we have Carlos Correa, their very large offseason acquisition, obviously with the 3-year contract worth about $35 million each with the opt-outs after each year, which Correa could very well opt out this after the season, even though he said he likes it in Minnesota because every player kind of says that where they go to a new team. But last season, he was certainly up there in the MVP race the entire season. He had played in 148 games to a 6.3 WAR, won the Platinum Glove, had about 3 defensive WAR. It was crazy. But this season so far, 29 games, 0.6 WAR. Obviously, down the track he was last season. Not horrible, but certainly a lot more is expected from him. He did have some injuries. We'll get to that. Next, they added Chris Archer, looking to turn his career around after some rocky years with injuries and such. But last season, he pitched in 6 games to a 0.2 WAR. This season, he pitched in 8 games to a negative 0.2 WAR. So far this season, he's been a net negative to the team. Should be able to turn that around at least a little bit and just be even like neutral, if not a little bit positive. But due to the injury so far, hopefully he can turn that around and kind of get his career back on track. That'd be nice. And then there are 3 other acquisitions to the right. They added Chris Paddock in the trade with the Padres. He pitched 23 games last season to a 1.8 WAR. He was never really truly able to break through to what he should have been with the Padres. And this season so far, he's pitched 5 games and to a 0.9 WAR. And we'll get to the injuries. Emilio Pagan also came from the Padres in that same trade. Last season, 67 games, negative 0.4 WAR. The Twins were looking to turn that around, try to pull some more potential out of him. But this season so far, 14 games, negative 0.3 WAR. So he's still having the negative effects on his team that he did last season. So there's that. They got rid of Taylor Rogers in that trade, and he pitched 40 games last season to a very good 1.6 WAR for a reliever. That is fantastic, and he's pretty much keeping up that exact same pace in San Diego as their closer now with 19 games and 0.7 WAR. So that's all their offseason changes. Next, we'll go to their record and how they've actually been playing this season. So against teams over 500, they're 5-6, and against teams under 500, they're 21-10. They've not played very many top teams yet at all, but when they do, they're below 500, which doesn't fare well for later in the season. That's like a lot of what the White Sox were criticized for last season. Their record, a lot of people thought their record was higher than it should have been because the AL Central was really weak, and a lot of their record was pretty bad against teams over 500, but was quite good against teams under 500. So that same scenario could happen with the Twins. They might just do well enough against teams under 500 that their record against teams over doesn't matter as much. It doesn't prevent them from making the playoffs. So these are the 11 teams they've played so far. So they're 2-2 against Baltimore. Even though Baltimore is doing pretty well this season, you still would want at least one more win from that series. They're 2-2 against Boston. 3-0 against Chicago, exactly what you want to see. The other team competing for the top spot in their division, so good for them. 2-1 against Cleveland, again, a division rival who could be competing for second in the division, probably not first. The Twins would have to probably have a decent collapse for that to happen. So 2-1 against them, 4-0 against Detroit. The Detroit team who is supposed to probably be competing for at least the second place in the division, maybe with the Guardians, but this season is turning out horribly for them. And they, like how the Twins started off last season, have about a 33 win percentage. But they are 4-0 against them. So they are taking down the teams that they're supposed to be taking down. Because in their division, they are 3-0 against the White Sox, 2-1 against Cleveland, 4-0 against Detroit, and then I'll skip Houston for a second there. They're 4-2 against Kansas City. So in their whole division, they've won 13 of their 16 in-division games. That is fantastic. They have to keep that up, and they'll be very set come October. So Houston, a team over 500, a very solid team this season, and basically all the last many seasons, they're 0-3 against. They're also 0-2 against the Dodgers. So this is where it comes in that they aren't beating the top teams, the teams that they would end up facing in the playoffs. They're 5-1 against Oakland, as they should be. Oakland completely tore down, so teams are supposed to rack up wins against them. They're 2-2 against Seattle, a team with probably similar expectations to Minnesota going into this season. And then they're 2-1 against the Rays, another team over 500. So the teams like Houston, LA, and Tampa help to build, and then Chicago build up their over 500 record. And then in their last 10, the Twins are 8-2. But those 10 wins come against Cleveland, Oakland, Kansas City, and Detroit. They won 2 of 1 against Cleveland, 2 of 1 against Oakland, and then they swept Kansas City in a 3-game series and played Detroit yesterday and beat them. So they are on a 5-game win streak, but it's against relatively weak teams that did not have high expectations, and teams that they definitely should be able to beat. Though the fact that 3 of those teams are in their division also fares well for them. So their schedule coming up, they play Detroit for 2 more games today and tomorrow. They play Kansas City for 4 games after that, and then Detroit for 5 games after that. The 5 is because one of the days is a doubleheader. So again, their next 11 games are against very weak division rivals. The Royals and the Tigers both have about 14 wins. Twins of those 11 games should very easily be able to get at least 7 or 8 wins at the bare minimum. Anything below that would be quite a big failure. This is the time to really, really cement their record as top of the league, especially considering after that they go on to face Toronto, who is having problems right now, but their roster is so stacked they should definitely be able to turn around. Then they face New York, currently the best team in the league. Dodgers obviously are right up there with them. And then they face Tampa, who are just perennial contenders. They're always up there. So if they can pound their record with Detroit, Kansas City, and then Detroit again before going Toronto, New York, Tampa, that would be good for them. And they'll set themselves up really well, even more than they already have with their 26-16 record. So injury-wise, they have 5 guys on the 60-day IL. 4 of them are pitchers. So Kenta Maeda, Jorge Alcala, John, I assume it is, John Romero, and then their other pitcher is Chris Paddock, and then Miguel Sano is the position player in the IL. Paddock just went on the IL. I believe his is for Tommy John, so he'll also miss next season, which is really a shame because the trade from San Diego to Minnesota looked like a great opportunity for him to really turn his career around and like solidify himself as the starter he was supposed to be, but he won't really get the opportunity anymore. He'll have to wait till 2024 to be back on the field. And then other very prominent guys that missed some time but were not on the 60-day IL. Some of these were on the 10-day IL or just like missed day to day. Buxton, he had his injury at the beginning of the season, which was starting when he slid into first base and thought he hurt himself, but he only ended up missing a few days from that. Correa was on the 10-day IL, so the Twins called up Royce Lewis, their their shortstop prospect. And then Sonny Gray missed some time, and then along with Bailey Ober. I forgot to write his last name on here. So the Twins have not been too affected by injuries. Obviously, losing 4 pitchers to the 60-day IL, and then Bailey Ober and Sonny Gray having missed some time also as pitchers. That's not the best, but they're making it work. Everything's going well for them so far. Last season was certainly just a fluke. So this season they should, obviously, if they win their division, they make the DS. Obviously, making the ALCS would be fantastic. But considering this team hasn't won a playoff game since 2004, they'd probably just like to at least win a game or two. Especially if that game or two could come against the Yankees, who seem to always be knocking them out in the playoffs. Especially, I know in 2003 and 2004, they faced them. So it's kind of an overview of the Twins start this season, how they're doing. And yeah, thank you.